Julian Crane, how did you first find out about magic?
Well, that's primarily in the context of my upbringing. I was raised as a Protestant Christian, so magic and sorcery were things that had been on my radar since I was a kid, of course. From that context, they were viewed as, evil or things to be avoided, that, good people don't do that sort of thing. So up until, I would say, my late teens, that's pretty much what I had assumed was the case. But during that time period, I started experimenting with marijuana and some other mind-altering alkaloids. And there's sort of a crossover between the interest in the occult and psychonautics. So I started to see more information about magic, about occult, and specifically Hermeticism around the time I was doing research about the ancient use of marijuana and other similar substances. So I think it was around the time I was 21. I had been veering away from Christianity from about the age of 15 till that time, but I had stuck with it because, it's a system that builds a lot of fear into it, and so, leaving is a big no-no. It was around the age of 21 that I was working a job in the back of a print shop. So I was oftentimes running lots of copies on a copier or a printer, and during that time I had access to a computer, and I was researching Hermeticism because after coming across that,
how did you first even hear the word Hermeticism? What was because it's you can kind of jump from Protestantism to Hermeticism, but that's a bit of a jump. So
yeah, that is a bit of a jump. So in high school, I got into the habit of researching world religions because I was curious about what people in Tibet were doing, what people in Indonesia were doing.
Was this because you just knew that Christianity wasn't for you? Had you a sense of that, or was it just curiosity, just to what does the rest of the world think?
It was a little of both. By the age of 12, I started questioning whether I really believed, what I was telling people that I did. Yeah. By the age of 15, that process began to grow, and between the ages of 15 and 21, I started doing research out of curiosity, but also, I guess you could call it a study in comparative religion. Right, not in an academic sense. Although it's funny, when I was in high school, I wasn't a terribly good student. I was a bit of a hellion. But there was days where I would skip entire days of school, and I'd go to the library, which was rather large, and I would just find a nook. And there was actually a religion and occult section in the library, so I spent a lot of time reading books. And this was, the internet was usable at the time, but it wasn't like the high-speed access that we have now. And so...
25 minutes to download a picture. Yeah, well,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was sort of the beginning of that. And
what sort of books had in it? What was there? Crowley stuff? Was there, or was it your standard kind of 101 or 1001 things you didn't know about the occult, or what sort of stuff?
Yeah, the texts that were in the high school library were a bit vague. They were more like mini encyclopedias that just, like an exploration of witchcraft.
Yes.
And I do believe there was actually one or two books by Crowley, which is ironic, but my high school was built in the 70s and it had never been painted a second time. They demolished the school shortly after I graduated. So they had a lot of, old stuff that had been there since 1965. So that's probably the reason for that.
Right, literally just bought it to fill the library kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they had books on Tibetan Buddhism, which I got into from an academic standpoint for a while. I didn't practice a lot of that outside of experimenting with meditation. And then once I graduated and started working full-time, like I said, by the time early 20s, 2021, I had access to a computer and I was doing this mindless work. So I was like, well, I'm going to spend time researching things that I find interesting. And I forget specifically what the trigger was for Hermeticism, but because I was researching so much stuff about not only other world religions, but Christianity itself, I wanted to understand the roots of it. Somewhere along the lines, I read an article that mentioned Hermeticism. It was probably from a know your enemy standpoint, from a Christian publication, if I had to guess. Yeah. So
why Hermeticism is Satan or something. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely something to that effect. But I wanted to learn more about it. So I spent a lot of time while doing that mindless work researching various spiritual topics, and Hermeticism was one of them. You know, it was an older website at the time, so I can't remember specifically what it is or if it even exists, but it talked about, you know, Hermeticism, the perennial philosophies, mystery cults, and things of that nature. That eventually led me to read The Kabbalion, which, it's funny, in occult circles nowadays, it seems like a lot of people want to talk shit about that book, and I can understand that from, you know, a certain level looking down, but as a neophyte, let's use that word,
Sure.
in my spiritual pursuits, I found it to be a very life-changing book. And while I didn't immediately leave Christianity at that moment, it was probably the fulcrum at which I turned and started looking at the world and saying, like, okay, I definitely don't believe this. That's bullshit. Nope, that doesn't work. Processes like that continued over the course up until I was 27. I think it was in 2010, I started researching magic specifically because of the things that I'd heard about it from the Hermetic things that I was reading. I came across initially Rufus Opus's blog, Jason Miller, Rune Soup, and at the time there was another blog, a writer, I think his name was Jack Faust. He called his blog the Von Faustus blog.
All right, not familiar with that at all now. So.
Yeah, I mean, that was a phenomenal blog, and I think Rufus Opus mentioned him in a comment and said, you know, when I first met you, I was pretty certain you were an adept, so that's a good compliment. And unfortunately, that blog was taken down, so I don't know where Jack is or what's going on with him. But those few blogs I continued to read, and it was mostly from an academic standpoint. I eventually...
So you weren't doing any kind of practice. Were you even meditating at this point, or were you...
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I actually was an ardent meditator between the ages of 12 and 14. I would go for a bike ride every day. I grew up in Massachusetts. There's a lot of pretty areas around here. And I would bike through the woods, get on this access road, and there was a bridge that would go over a highway. Sounds like a weird place to meditate, but I found the sound of traffic to be similar to that of flowing water.
Okay.
And I would sit on the bridge and just close my eyes. I didn't know what I was doing. You know, at the time I had assumed, based on the little bit that I knew about meditation, that you were trying to completely empty your mind. So I just did whatever I could, which was basically closing my eyes, doing breathing exercises, and trying to get lost in the trance of the sound of the traffic. And I would do that for anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes a day for 3 or 4 days a week.
Wow. Yeah.
By the time I was 15, I kind of lost interest with it, you know, because that's around the time that I started experimenting with psychonautic endeavors, marijuana, and other curious elixirs.
Was there any... did you have any kind of insights or any kind of fruition from that meditation time, or was it more kind of an escape, in a sense, away from, you know, like a kind of a reprieve from the world? Or
yeah, I would say it would probably be more considered a reprieve. Hold on a second. Oh, I lost my window there for a second. I wasn't necessarily doing it to accomplish anything from a magical sense. It did give me a sense of peace. And I guess I was just curious about my own mind, and meditation is, you know, what's the point of this? Why do people do it? You know, what, if anything, does it have to offer me? But yeah, at that age, it wasn't anything to do with preparing for a magical practice, as you would see in so many intro books.
So when you got to the drugs, man, was that born out of just like your normal standard teenage, I want to, you know, take drugs and, you know, experience these things, or was that coming from some sort of spiritual pursuit as well, or, you know, what way did that kind of play out?
Well, what's interesting is, you know, again, being raised Christian, you know, I was raised with the whole drugs are bad, okay? So I had been asked by friends as early as 9th grade, do you want to smoke? And I'd say no. And I think it was in late 9th grade, early 10th grade, a friend of mine convinced me to do it. And so I did. And, you know, it was a life-changing experience because, one, I quickly realized this isn't nearly as dangerous as I have been told by clergy or the police or my parents. And two, you know, just what it did to my imagination, it was like, wow, the world is a lot bigger, and this is a window through which I can look at this world and experience it in a new way. So that was another thing that kind of made me question my religious beliefs. And as I continued to smoke, I used it as a tool to explore my own mind. And that led me to other things which will remain anonymous for various reasons, but I did experiment quite a bit, and I had experiences that I would define as spiritual. Now, I don't know if someone else going through the same process would necessarily define it as such.
And does that matter?
Yeah, absolutely. But having those experiences that I would define as spiritual definitely led me to using those substances more as a focus for spiritual development than partying, which of course I did my fair share of partying.
Yeah.
But by the time I had gotten a little bit deeper into it, I was blending it with short-term meditation or, going for hikes in the woods for hours at a time in an altered state of consciousness.
And was this allowing you more insights into the structure of your mind, the structure of the world, or was it like getting in touch with like the trees, or having a greater understanding of ecology, or what it like? Without I'm not going too much into like your personal kind of spiritual things, but what was the what were the insights exactly you were getting from this process?
I would say it was a little bit of both. Marijuana in particular certainly made me feel more connected to nature. So I spent a lot of time walking around in the woods. It's hard to, it's been a while since those initial experiences, and my relationship with that plant now is very different than it was back then. But it definitely gave me a sense that, everything was connected. And, I had learned about things like that in high school biology, like, chemically, atomically, we're all connected on a certain level. But on a surface level, this doesn't really make sense to people, or at least it certainly didn't make sense to me. But when I had experienced those initial highs from marijuana, it sort of connected all the dots. So on one end, I would spend a lot of time walking around in nature and trying to connect with, the ecology, the land, whatever that means. And then also, at home at night, I would smoke, and I would sort of go into my mind. I developed a practice, I guess you would call it like the regression of memory, where I would get high, I would listen to music, or I'd be silent, and I would go backwards in my memory, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, a day, 2 days, a week, a month, and I would go back as far as I possibly could. Now, I don't really know why I did that, but it was an interesting thing, because by doing that, I initiated, remembering memories that I had completely forgot. Again, not exactly sure why I even developed that. It's just something that is a byproduct of the experience itself.
It's interesting, because that is, while not doing it over the course of, like say, weeks, but whatever, it is it's a theosophical kind of exercise that they're prescribed to do, is that you go back over your day again, but from the opposite way, from the end to the beginning, so the night to the morning. So it's interesting then that you came across that as a similar type of technique on your own.
I would agree. Yeah, for sure.
So then, did you progress to other drugs at that point, or was the hermetic thing something that you were crossing over? Or what was going on at that kind of period when you're in this job, you're a bit bored, so you decide to take on the occult? Why not?
Yeah. Well, so there's a transition period from moving from marijuana to experimenting with psychedelic compounds, which, in the U.S., I don't know how different it is from Ireland, but even going back then, with a little bit of research online, there was actually 3 or 4 different natural sources of substances that were, by federal law, actually technically legal.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
So I would experiment with those, and, marijuana is sort of like training wheels for a full-blown psychedelic experience. It prepares you for that to an extent, but I mean, for me personally, nothing could have prepared me for some of the experiences I had. And in the context of those experiences, I came across things that I guess I would define as spirits, for lack of a better term. And I would see and experience things, with my eyes open or my eyes closed in particular, like full-blown, 3D geometric shapes, and sometimes, entire landscapes, buildings, places that look like foreign worlds, extremely clear, crystal clear colors, really intense architecture if there was buildings in a landscape or whatever. So that was like, okay, so what's going on here? Is this just my imagination going nuts? Am I seeing something that maybe is actually a non-physical place that does exist somewhere else? And I still don't necessarily have many concrete answers to those questions up to this point in time, but it was those experiences coupled with moving out of Christianity and taking a look at some of the other religious and spiritual traditions around the world, and then coming across Hermeticism, and that leading to other occult topics and magical systems, and the idea that you can interact with non-physical entities who may very well be completely separate from you and, have their own personality, have their ability to think, and also affect you if they choose to do so, or if you enter into a relationship with those spirits.
So what was your first, I suppose, actual deliberate magical act that you said, right, I'm going to take what I've learned from the internet, I'm going to apply it here, outside of, say, the psychedelic experience, or include it if you want, but I mean, like when was the first sigil, or whatever was the first definitive, I'm going to call up Satan here and have a chat with him moment?
Yeah, it wasn't anything fantastic. I think it was around the age of 20 or 21, and I had been reading just basic descriptions in the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. I had been reading some of Taylor Elwood's works, which is an author who I still read a lot today. And
that's the pop magic, or the pop culture type magic.
I mean, that's what he's really well known for. Taylor's been practicing for a very long time, and I mean, he has a traditional background in trading, and he's written quite a few books that aren't mutually exclusive to that topic, but that's sort of what he's known for. And somewhere in the context of those experiences, I decided I'm going to try to do the LBRP. And at that time, starting from square one, it seemed complicated to me, and I'm sure that what I did was a complete bastardization of the process. It probably didn't work from a traditional standpoint, but what it did do is, one, it proved to me that all hell wasn't going to break loose if I'm going to enter into a ritual practice, and three, it provided a sense of liberty that was probably a big major step towards eventually leaving Christianity and having the initial steps that would provide the context for knowing there's more to life than what I've been told, and this is a doorway that I can walk through to have a new experience and to expand in various different ways.
Yeah, it seems to be one of those things that you find kind of a niche initial ritual, whether you do it right or not, whatever, even if it's something as a, I suppose, as a stereotypical horror movie thing, like saying the Our Father backwards or something like that, that kind of, it seems to loosen the change. In what you said, in that you realise, well, it didn't, the world didn't end, there wasn't demons coming for me, there wasn't, and it seems to have some sort of positive effect. So at what point then did it go from just being, I suppose, a way of releasing the past kind of hold over that Christianity had, and then did you start going, oh, hold on, this actually works, this could get me to more of what I actually want, more knowledge, more things, whatever it is?
Yeah. I'm going to say, if I remember correctly, it started with some, small experiments with Gordon White's shoaling technique. And I wasn't trying to achieve anything crazy. I wasn't trying to get a yacht. I wasn't even trying to, attract a job. I think I did very mundane things, like, I found a green tennis ball at a basketball court. Kind of ridiculously trivial things like that. But
specific enough that you knew when it happened that's what it was. That was the magic fulfilling itself. Yeah.
Correct. So I had a few successes with that, and I said, okay, we'll take this a step further. Now, around that time, I had been reading a lot of Jason Miller's blog, and I'd say over the course of the next year, this is probably 2010 or 2011, if I want to guess, give or take a year. Over the course of that year, I started using sigils and shoaling a lot more, and I started using it for more practical things and to attract things into my life that would help me to move up in my job, get a little extra money if necessary, maybe find a book that I needed that I was having issues, things like that. And at some point or another during that year, I had been reading about the Strategic Sorcery course, and I decided I wanted to take it. Now, at the time, I was at the same company, but I had just taken over the social media department. I became interim social media manager, but that's a nice role, the name of it, but I wasn't, making money hand over fist.
Yeah.
So at the time I was like, $150, do I really want to spend this? I think this is legit, but I'm not sure. So what I did is I did a sigil shoal to influence my boss to see if I could get him to pay for it. Now my boss was, and is my former boss was an open-minded guy, not a practitioner by any means, but he seemed to have a more than quaint relationship or interest in Buddhism. So I knew he was open-minded. So I really rolled the dice on this. I put together a sigil shoal with the intent to get my company to pay for the course. And I asked for 15 minutes of his time to explain an idea that I had about incorporating what I said I think was psychology or metaphysics into the sales and marketing process. So we went into the boardroom, and I laid out the basic, a quick history lesson in chaos magic, and then basically just taught him verbatim how sigils work from the context of Gordon's techniques. And he actually really took to it.
Right, because that could have went very weird,
Yeah,
very quick.
Yeah, but magic involves risks. You do have to take the possibility of burning your fingers, as Jake Stratton-Kent would say. And he took very well to it. And I said, I personally believe that the use of sigils and some other magical technologies could be useful in the context of marketing and sales. Marketing is a very, for lack of a better term, manipulative practice. I mean, I'm still working in marketing today, and I try to be transparent with my customers and clients and use it as a source for good. But marketing has a history of questionable manipulation of the mind, so there's sort of a crossover.
It's literally what it is. Like, it is trying to change people's minds and put a glamour over them. So it's like Magic 101, essentially, really.
Yeah, so I was able to kind of draw parallels between, sigil magic and some very entry-level stuff to, corporate marketing and sales, and my boss bit on it. I told him about Jason's course, and I said, if you see value in sigilization, I think there's a lot of stuff in this course that could potentially be useful, that could be applied to my profession here as a marketing and sales professional, because around that same time, I took a full-time sales position. I was still the social media manager, but on top of that, I got into sales because I wanted to make more money. And, long story short, he got a kick out of the presentation. He saw the value in the course, and he had the CFO cut me a check, and I entered the strategic sorcery course that day. Right,
cool. And how then did you start applying the course to the job, or was it more now that I have the money, I'm just going to do my own thing?
As that was the beginning of understanding strategic sorcery, I bought a few of Jason's books, Sorcerer's Secrets, Financial Sorcery, and I've bought a few more since then, but at the time it was those two. And I went through the whole course. I did everything verbatim by the book. I did the homework assignments up until maybe the third one, but by the third one, I don't think I received a grade or anything back from Jason.
I didn't even receive anything from the first one, so I give up then.
Right on. Yeah. And it was like, whatever. He's just going to tell me whether he thinks I'm doing right or not, and I'm doing this because I want to prove to myself that it is actually going to work. So, I worked through the whole course over the course of that year, and I would say maybe around the 6-month mark, I started to try applying more things from it, whether it was candle magic or mojo bags, working with some of the spirits he had listed. Saint Himabanus, he mentioned. I think it was in the course, or it might have even been. I'm dating myself here. The Strategic Sorcery Forum.
Right. Yeah.
But so Saint Himabanus was this guy who I guess he was vague. He's not a well-known saint, but I guess he had been wealthy prior to becoming a saint. And he was the patron of charity towards, everyday people or workers who are struggling to sustain their business. And it was something to the effect of carrying around a picture of him in your wallet I think it was supposed to be a financial thing, but what it actually ended up doing is it made me hyper-focused on giving and charity and helping people in need.
Okay. And so you got that straight out of your wallet. I love none of that. Give me the money, please.
Right? But, it's interesting because I feel like charity in and of itself, if it's done in the right context, not to be like patting yourself on the back. There's a line from the Bible that I would actually use. It's like, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And if I interpreted that correctly, it's like, sure, give and help, but don't, make it a public thing. And I would say that I found from that moment to this point in time, I've made it a point to donate as much as possible, but that might just be $1 to like an ALS organization or even 50 cents. But whenever I'm out in public and there's an opportunity to do that, I'll give $1 or a change or whatever. And as time has gone on, I've tried to be more progressive in my charity donations to people who are in need. And without going into details about that, I did notice that as that arc went up, it seemed as if my own income increased as well. Now, that may not be a direct byproduct of charitable giving, but I would say that, that little experiment with Saint Himabanus sort of instigated that. And it's been a big part of, I don't know if you would say the magical practice, but is giving to charity magic?
Well, I mean, you have the whole thing of tithing, I suppose, has a long history in religious thought. And so many people do mention, and I'd even myself would agree with that kind of sentiment, that there seems to be something, even going back to Crowley's idea of having a small celebration, if you've no money, and doing something that you would only do if you had the money, then because it kind of seems to, with money or with things, it can sometimes be a block somewhere. So, and if you're starting to grasp onto stuff, no, my money, I need more money,
right,
then it kind of stuff. So if you give stuff away, there seems to be some sort of element where it seems to unblock this thing. And, obviously, charity is a good one. Tithing, all of that kind of stuff. There seems to be some correlation. Also, it makes you feel good. So, I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
So, was your boss checking in at you, looking for your weekly magic report or anything? Or was he just kind of looking to see if just letting you do your thing? Or?
Well, I was pretty passionate about it, so I would just tell him, what I was doing anyway. I mean, so what does that exactly look like? I mean, one of the things I was doing was embedding invisible sigils into emails and tracking the success rates between an email stream that was just mundane versus one that had a hidden sigil in it that was designed to close a sale. And I actually had a spreadsheet, but I haven't been in that company for 2 years, so I don't have it anymore. But I did notice there was an uptick in magically enhanced emails and other digital experiments like that versus just purely mundane actions. So that was further proof that it was effective. Eventually I got a cubicle at my work, and I had a lot of, I had the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. I had a lot of sacred geometry posters, and I actually had a small altar on my desk dedicated to Papa Legba, which I'll augment by saying that I never intended to develop a relationship with Papa Legba as, a white American. I tread carefully on just trying to play with other cultures, spirits and deities, particularly if they're part of, a religion like one of the African traditional religions. And the reason that I, decided, okay, I will initiate an experience with this is because I was actually working with Bob Legba, the amalgamation of Bob from the Church of the Subgenius.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Origin Epoch as well, yeah.
And within that same time period, I actually was also working with the Gatekeeper from the 40 Servants. So it was my intention that, here's a way that maybe I can get in connection with a similar energy to what the spirit represents without, culturally appropriating the spirit. Yeah. The flip side of that, what was interesting, is that I started having dreams. I've had, I'd say in the past 10 years, 5 dreams where Papa Legba, or an entity claiming to be him, has showed up on multiple occasions. There was one in particular. I was in a Catholic church playing a piano, and there was an uproar. Like, I don't know, this like Pope-like figure.
Was it like, who let the Protestant in? Who's let the Protestant
maybe. It's weird. I was like in this tower playing this piano, and I don't know if you've ever tried to play a piano in a dream, but like the keys start growing or falling apart. I'm like, this is awful. And there was all these people who ran into the room, like, oh, we have to evacuate. And it's like, okay, so running down like the spiral staircase. And at one point I became lucid, and I kind of just drifted out of a window. And the church was in this like barren wasteland. It was like all red, blackish red dirt, but there was a symbol across a large like mound, and I kind of floated up above this scene, and it was strikingly similar to Papa Legba's Veve.
Okay.
So it's like, okay. Yeah. And I had a few other experiences where he popped up, or a character popped up claiming to be him, and I said, all right, let's give it a shot. So without treading the line of cultural appropriation, I took a look in some of Jason's work. He's mentioned Papa Legba as a spirit to work with in a couple places, and I just went very easy with it. I did a lot of research about who he is, what he means in the context of the tradition, what people in America who work with him are doing, what his relation is to not just the ATRs but hoodoo, and I also researched some people, everybody. Well, occultists seem to like to talk online, so there's a lot of people who had no hold bars about, yeah, sure, no, I'll work with anybody, and this is this amazing experience I had. So I read a lot of different information, and I made regular offerings of coffee, rum, tobacco, and like I said, I literally had a little altar on my desk, which most people didn't notice it. It was a mojo bag. I had a cup of coffee, which it's corporate America. Of course, there's going to be coffee on my desk, and a picture of his veve. Nobody ever paid any attention to it. And while, I can't say that I've had any overtly profound experiences other than the dreams, which in and of themselves were profound to me personally.
Yeah.
One of the functions of Papa Legba for those who work with him is to find lost things. And there was several occasions where I lost my wallet or keys or something incredibly important.
Right.
And, I petitioned him and
got them.
It happened. So, but, I want to augment all of that by saying, I'm not an initiate. I don't claim to know anything outside of the box. It's just, this is part of what magic is about: experimenting, developing relationships with spirits, and really, just trying to answer questions for yourself, which model is correct? Is this all psychology? Is it energetic? Is it spiritual? Is it information, or is it a meta model? And I try to remain blissfully agnostic to this. One of the biggest tips I ever got from another practicing magician was from Cat Vincent, because I had an experience where things got a little too heavy, and I was talking to him online or on the phone. This was probably 3 or 4 years ago. And he said, well, the way I approach all this stuff is don't believe that any of it is real. Believe that all of it could possibly be real. Mm. And that's an interesting perspective to come to, because if you do find yourself in a heavy experience, if you can default yourself to that perspective or paradigm shift, for a term that I think makes more context to chaos magic, you can navigate difficult experiences in a way that perhaps you couldn't if you were 100% sure that the spirit realm is real, this is happening, and this entity is going to eat me.
Yeah, sure. And the other way too, if you're having trouble not getting any kind of response, the whole acting as if it's real, like as if the demon or the spirit, whatever, is in the room with you, can have the the same kind of boostering effect as it can have a negating effect. When things are getting a bit too heavy.
Right.
That's right. So is magic real? Who knows? Acting as if it real seems to cause things to go a bit strange or a bit weird.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, the reason I do magic is, I guess I would say currently, and for pretty much all the time I've been doing it, is I'm into quote-unquote low magic as it's presented in Lon Milo Duquette's book of the same name. For anyone who hasn't read that, it's one of my favorite books because it's absolutely hilarious. He pulls a lot of humor into his work. And he was talking about in the beginning of that book, working a dead-end job. He was trying to become a professional musician, and he was struggling with that. And, he was trying to balance, a 9 to 5, which I could relate to that because I lived that life for about 15 years. And he talked about, one day I decided to, craft the second pentacle of Jupiter or whatever it was. And he talks through, starting, having no idea what the hell he's doing, and openly talks about his experiments and the wins and the fails, and he ties it all together with humor. It's an excellent book, and
as are most of his books, in fairness.
Yeah. I mean, he's a great guy. I had the good fortune to interview him. He was
cool.
one of several people. Well, just like you and Lon, Jake, Rufus Opus, Jason, a lot of other people that I got to interview for Interview with the Magus, which was the book that I inadvertently created. I don't want to divert too far, but that book was a collection of the articles that I had done for Disinfo for the 2 years it existed before it was removed from the internet. And I was fortunate enough to connect with Lon, and he was one of my favorite interviews. He was, a guy who got really into the process and was like, thank you, I appreciate you reaching out to me. But low magic, as far as it is presented in that book. It's about getting shit done, you know? Like, I'm not here to delve really deeply into thaumaturgy or theurgy. And while those things obviously have their point, I'm very practical. You know, I want to make money. I want to attract things that I want in my life, experiences that I want, and I don't make any bones about like that being my main focus.
I think, yeah, the whole low magic, high magic divide is, well, one, you know, labels so bullshit, but it's kind of, there is a thing in certain aspects of magical thought that kind of looks down on the whole low magic thing, because it's kind of sometimes bracketed in with like kind of new age, you know, new thought, or, you know, a bit kind of fluffy, or it's put in with like the you know, selfish, or, you know, you shouldn't be, you know, you should be doing something greater for, you know, for the world, you know, and that your magic practice should be, you know, all aimed on an awakening or enlightenment, or the high magic aspects, whatever way you want to go with that kind of thing. But
like holy.
yeah, you know, it's like, while we live in a world, we live in the earth element, we have to have shelter, we have to have food, we have to have all these other things, and to kind of negate, or to say that that's wrong to pursue these basic goals, or, you know, after you have your basic needs met, to pursue, you know, more ambitious goals, seems that it's missing half of the balance, or something like that. It goes back to that kind of Eastern thought that we in the West kind of have a bit wrong, of Maya as illusion, like that all of this is illusion, so it doesn't matter. That starving person over there, it doesn't matter. You know, so we don't have to do anything about that, because it's not real. It's probably a non-player character anyway, or whatever it is. And we have that kind of feeling, I think, towards low magic. It's not so much in chaos magic, because an awful lot of chaos magic is about getting shit done in general. That's you know what, and it's kind of missing the polarity of the high magic element to it, which is, you know, would be a more complete system. But yeah, and I think most people come to magic initially because they need something, you know, they need more money, they need their ex-boyfriend back, they need, you know, a new car, whatever it is. No one goes, you know, my life is great, I think I'll get into magic.
Yeah, I'd like to be the high priestess of a mystery cult.
yeah, you know, just for a laugh.
Right. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And I mean, I suppose, you know, when you stumble across topics like the great work, I mean, something like that can start with low magic, and maybe once you get on that path, perhaps it could lead to, you know, spiritual, in-depth spiritual seeking. You know, for me, it's not a main focus. You know, there's obviously plenty of stories out there about people who, you know, either completely ignored that altogether, they just stuck with, you know, what Aiden Watcher would call as dirt sorcery, or what I would think of as a punk rock approach to doing magic. And then you have the progressive rock version of magic, which is, you know, ceremonial magic, or, you know, the really in-depth ritual magic, which, you know, serves its purpose. It has its place. And for people who are into it, you know, more power to you. But I've never been personally, you know, into the whole idea that, you know, that's a no-no. Like, this is important, serious stuff. You got to get down to business. Like, I want to have fun. And
yeah.
You know, like magic is very similar to music for me. I've spent my whole life involved with it to some extent or another. I think it was the Grateful Dead who said, magic is what we do, and music is how we do it. Right. And I've seen a lot of parallels between the joy that comes from, you know, making any sort of art, but for me, music in particular, and magic, which, you know, clearly magic is an art. Most likely it's a science, but I tend to focus more on the artistic side, and I experiment heavily. And I've been successful up to this point with the things I've tried to achieve. So all in all, it's a good time, and it's an interesting thing to be part of.
Yeah, I think the whole, I'm definitely with Alan Moore on that. Art equals magic equals art. It's the same thing, just the canvas is slightly different. And I don't really see, well, I mean, I do, of course. I could bullet point it out if I really wanted, but I don't really see any difference between creativity and magic. It seems to have the same source. Whatever is the agency for magic is also the agency for creativity, or whatever the place where insights and awakenings come from is the same place that you know, that new song comes from, or that, you know, that painting comes from, or the inspiration. Yeah. Well, literally inspiration. You know, bringing in the spirit, that kind of thing.
Yep.
I think another important part of the low magic thing is that it's all well and good to be trying to involve yourself in, the higher end of things, whatever. But if your life is a mess, I mean, you should start there. Start where you are. I love that expression, and I think it's Randas, but I heard it from Duncan Trussell talking to Joe Rogan. So that's where he says, tend to the part of the garden that you can reach. Do the thing that's in front of you. And if that happens to be, I need to do magic, to sort out my rent payment, then that's what it should be, rather than worrying about, I don't know, awakening or something like that.
Yeah,
whatever.
Having a really in-depth conversation with an archangel.
Yeah. Oh, but like you, what do you call up Raphael and go, hello, yeah, can you pay my rent for me, please? It's probably not the most appropriate use of his time.
Yeah.
So was it over the trajectory was that you're getting very much into actual practical magic and doing all this thing? Was there still that element of the drug use at that point, or as you got older, did that wane, or did it change, or what was going on there?
Yeah, I would say by 25 it had waned largely. By 27, pretty much the only thing I was doing was drinking, and I still smoke marijuana, and at that time, and I still do now. But I actually prefer low THC, high CBD strains. They're not terribly psychedelic, and in America now, because of the 2018 Farm Bill, you can get hemp flower. It's essentially cannabis. It's marijuana, but because it's below 1% THC, you can buy it online. You can have it shipped to your house. You don't have to go to a dispensary. So I tend to get lower THC strains, and I can still get a psychoactive high from it, but I'm not really looking to get blasted when I was 15, because honestly, depending upon the strain, particularly sativas, they make me paranoid, and they give me anxiety. So the low THC...
That's my experience of them anyway. So.
Yeah, so the low THC, high CBD strains, you get a subtle psychedelic effect, for lack of a better term, but the CBD really mellows it out. And I'll take CBD extracts when I do get anxiety attacks, and 300 or 400 milligrams of CBD if I'm having like a moderate anxiety attack, it's over within like 20 minutes. Cool. As an aside, but so I don't. I do experiment, and I am still involved with that to an extent, but like the major experiments that I've done with the more, let's call them intense alkaloids, I went 10 years without touching anything like that, and then have done some experiments, particularly with substances that are mind-altering, but in the context of American law are legal. There's various substances where I live. For example, Salvia divinorum is completely legal. Morning glory seeds are legal to possess.
Right, okay, yeah.
So, and there's a few other obscure substances of that. So, at this stage in the game, I make it a very big point to, when I am engaging in experiments like that, to stick with things that are legal.
Any plans on when the lockdown finishes to head to South America and do some ayahuasca or anything like that? Or is that on the mission list? Yeah,
DMT and ayahuasca and the wild toad venom, which is 5-MeO DMT, those are all very interesting alkaloids, but some of the experiences I've had on other psychedelics, which are considered training wheels for that type of experience, well, some of the training wheels experience that I've had were terrifying, and if that's just an entry level to what that experience is going to be, while it's very intriguing, I'm not entirely sure that I want to do it. Some days I'll wake up, if I'm on vacation in the summer, I'd go down to, Chile or whatever, that would be great. But then, I'll regress back to some of my own experiences and think about being at the peak of that and being like, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, I don't know. I think there used to be the old idea was that you didn't take the ayahuasca, it was that, the shaman did, and you asked him the questions, but... or you hear those stories about people on salvia who's, that became like a a pillow for like 3 weeks, and that I could totally felt it, or that like they go into these mad places, but it's like feels like a lifetime. I go, no thanks, no, don't want that. Not interested in being a pillow for 3 weeks. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard those stories. Or one guy who supposedly, turned into a glass of orange juice and he tipped over, and that a lot of that seems like hype. And I'm sure there are some experiences that are maybe relevant. Like in my own experience with it, the first time I indulged, Salvia Divinorum, it was in my friend's house in his attic, and it was a unique room because the attic was an octagonal shape, like it was a long hallway. And it was an octagon. I don't know why it was built like that. It was an old house it was probably about 100 years old. It was on the main street in the town that I grew up. So, I took a couple rips, and the octagonal room started rotating.
Oh, no.
And it started like quicker and quicker and quicker. And like the body high from that is borderline comatosis. Like anytime I've done it, I've had to, sit or lay down because I generally can't move otherwise. And I closed my eyes, and that I was still in the octagonal room, and it was spinning faster and faster and faster. And all of a sudden I was thrown out of the octagon, and I saw a giant beehive. If you've seen a beehive up close, they're like little octagon or hexagons. And so it was this huge beehive with all of these spinning octagons. So I flew out of the room. I saw this. I got sucked back into my octagon, and I opened my eyes, and the room was still spinning, but it started slowing down slower and slower. And as soon as the experience stopped, it like clicked back to reality. And those are interesting experiences,
Yeah.
and I've got stories for days of that. But all of that stuff primarily, the only way to really translate that as useful information into the world is through art, so I try to take that and, translate those experiences to melodies on a guitar or sound effects, or, there was a period of time where I was really into drawing, and I guess that's the most important thing about those substances. Like, psychedelics are an initiatory experience, and if I find that some of them are less forgiving than others, like if you knock on that door and you're just there to party, you will get your ass handed to you. If you show up with respect and the intention of a spiritual event, you might still get your ass handed to you, but it'll play a little bit nicer with you for, taking the time to make sure you're there for the right purposes.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, the whole set and setting of these things are like the most important part of it.
Yep.
So, what does your magic look like these days? Where are you at the minute? What's going on? What are you reading? What's your approach? All of that.
I'm reading quite a bit of stuff. I'm currently reading the Magical Knowledge series by Josephine McCarthy. She's a self-identified magical adept, and based on just reading her work, I'm going to have to assume she definitely is. She talks with a lot of confidence. She's intense. She has this very interesting approach to ritual, working with inner contacts, protection magic, and it's quite different from a lot of other authors that I've read, but I find it to be very interesting, and I just started her Quaria course recently. I'm on the tarot module because I'm simultaneously doing the Rune Soup tarot course. I'm reading Taylor Elwood currently, Walking with Spirits. I enjoy all of his books. I think he's a vastly underrated occultist, especially considering his time in the subculture and the amount of stuff he's published. Yeah. But I guess he recently shifted over to doing that full time, so good for him. Let's see what else. I just bought my first copy of the collected Solomonic text, so the Lesser Key, the Greater Key, the Testament of Solomon. I read, what was the most recent? Black Abbot, White Magic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that book because I'm doing, to better answer your question, my main focus for the past 6 months has been working with Johann Tritamius' The Art of Drawing Spirits into Crystals.
Okay, very interesting.
And I'm working through that with both Rufus Opus's Seven Spheres and then also Frater Ashen Chassan's Pathways Through Stone and Circle.
Okay. So you're getting a bit more into the high magic then, obviously, than just
Yeah, I mean,
secret sigils in an email.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do a lot of candle magic. I like to use Judica Isles' Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells as yeah. And I like to use it as a recipe book. Like I'll have an idea about something I need to accomplish, so I'll go to that section. I'll read, maybe 20 or 30 spells, and then I'll cherry pick elements from each of them and build a spell with those elements. And it seems to have been quite effective. I've been able to achieve certain things from doing that on a fairly regular basis. But as far as the quote unquote high magic, I would say that, you know, the art of drawing spirits into crystals is a bit more in line with that. It's certainly, you know, would be considered part of the Grimoire tradition. Hopefully I don't get chewed out for that online by some of the Uber Maguses, but
just ignore
like I recently had asked Rufus Opus, because he's been doing these daily live hermetic videos where he just talks about a certain topic, and he was talking about Tritamius, and I said, what's the difference in your opinion between, like, you know, art of drawing spirits into crystals versus the Solomonic approach? And to paraphrase him, he ultimately said, well, you know, it really is part and parcel. Like, the table of working and the tools involved for the art of drawing spirits into crystals is considerably more simplified than, say, the circle and the triangle of art and the lion skin belt and the golden ring and all of the bells and whistles that are used for, say, the lesser key. Tritamius is still in that tradition, which I find very interesting because, you know, when I was younger, I had wanted to get more involved in conjuring, but, you know, the tool sets and the time restraints and the fasting and everything that goes into that, like for someone such as myself who's, you know, working in corporate America.
Sure, yeah.
It's not a process that I really thought I could ever bring to the table.
You mean you didn't have enough time to skin a goat and make your own phalum? No, that just wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of goats around here. It's the lions, you know, the African lions.
Yeah.
You know, you know, you show up at the zoo with a black hilted blade, and they kind of look at you funny.
Yeah, you don't get in. Yeah, don't let you into the zoo.
But what's interesting is, you know, the art of drawing spirits into crystals, it you know, it has a very similar aesthetic to, say, the Solomonic approach, and I assume some of the other grimoires. I mean, I've read several of them. I've read all of Jake Stratton Kent's writings, the True Grimoire, the Geosophias, the Encyclopedia Goetica. And, you know, that stuff fascinates me, and the True Grimoire is actually more simple than, say, the Lesser Key and the Solomonic text, but Tritamius one, you're dealing with angels, which, you know, it could just be a byproduct of my Christian upbringing, but I do feel a general more sense of safety working with them, even though angels can be particularly dangerous if you approach them in the wrong way.
Yeah, but, you know, the first thing to ever say to a human is, you know, calm down, stop being scared.
Yeah. You know, but I mean, I had done the, It's you know, and I think it's Sorcerer's Secrets, it's the Evocation of Bune, but really what that is, it was Jason Miller's approach to a petition of that spirit. I had done that on several occasions, asking for big payoffs for some major sales gigs, and I got them all 3 times I asked for them. So
you were saying that previous to me, and when you're talking about Boone or Bune or whatever with that, it wasn't until you changed the pronunciation of the name that it really clicked for you. Like, most people call it Boone. That's just, you know, like, because that's what it looks like.
And who knows? You know, maybe I'm wrong, but I found a well-written article at that time that talked about the names of the spirits, the pronunciations, and then also the N's. I had never heard of an N before, ENN. It's a chant that is used to enhance the evocation of the spirit, I guess. But so I've never done a full-blown Solomonic working, but, you know, that petition that Jason has in his book, I have found it to be very useful. And, you know, doing that was scary at first, because it's like, you know, what if the spirit really shows up? And I would say that it did, but I feel like a lot of people, when they get into magic and they're at that level where they're like, okay, I'm ready to try something a little bit bigger, but I'm terrified, that can either greatly enhance the experience or it can completely deflate it. And, you know, I kind of had to shift from, you know, expecting full 3-dimensional anthropomorphic manifestation of a spirit that looks semi-human and part animal or whatever. I feel like people who are chasing that, you know, if they actually get it, would lose their shit.
Oh, for sure.
And you know, if it's kind of missing the point, I think. Like, one of the things I've learned from working the art of drawing spirits into crystals over the past 6 months is that, you know, if you pay attention, oftentimes nothing happens. At least for me, it doesn't during the evocation. I haven't seen any 3-dimensional manifestations of angels. What I have noticed is on any of the days that I do it, I will get very strange synchronicities that are directly connected to the spirit or the sphere which it controls. Or if I ask for something, I'll get a part of what I'm asking for, or a pathway that is increasing the probability of that will click into place. So one of the things, and this is funny, this will probably piss off a lot of people because I'm talking about, ceremonial magic or, the grimoire tradition and blending it with pop culture magic, which, a lot of people seem to hate. But
a real issue.
I will justify it in saying that the pop culture element of it was a synchronicity that spoke to the experience. So I did I believe it was a Wednesday, so it would have been Raphael. So the Sphere of Mercury. And I basically, in the 7 spheres, Aro will just say, when you're first doing this, you want to get initiated to the spheres, and ultimately you just go through the motions, you conjure the spirit, it's supposed to be present, and you ask to be initiated into the secrets of that sphere. So I did that a few times, and I think it was the 3rd time I had done it. It was essentially repeating the same things that I had done prior, asking to be initiated deeper into the sphere of Mercury. Now, later on in that day, I had opened up my computer and I was going to watch a TV show or whatever. It was Netflix. Now, I'm a big comics fan. I love the Marvel Universe. I don't know anything about DC, and I'm completely disconnected from that universe. And there was a banner for The Flash, and I've had no interest in that whatsoever. And I got a genuine, let's call it a spiritual ping, and it was like, watch that.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't know. I find a lot of the DC content to be overly cheesy, but okay. So I watched 3 episodes, and I was like, am I just is this in my head? Was I really prompted to watch this? And at the end of the 3rd episode, the villain, just before he's killed off, he said, "I'm going to capture the Flash. Can you imagine? It would be like harnessing the powers of the god Mercury." And so, so I looked into it, and what I didn't know is that the Flash, his fictional narrative is tied up with, the actual mythology of Mercury.
Yeah,
so
sure. And the original Flash looked exactly like Mercury.
Yeah, I went and found the older artwork, and I noticed that as well. So, I mean, to me, I take that as evidence.
So when you've seen the Flash, you didn't have any mercurial correspondence to the Flash at all. It was just a really
correct.
Right. Oh, very interesting. Because I thought you would even well, sure, if you don't know.
I didn't know. Yeah. I mean, I knew nothing about the character. I've never been, like I said, I was a Marvel kid. I'm big into Spider-Man and some of the other X-Men and stuff. But I was completely blind on most of the DC universe, and certainly didn't know anything about the background about the Flash or how that might tie in. So I took that, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm nuts, whatever. I'll own it. But to have a genuine something that felt external be like, you should watch this, and then to have those dots connect after the fact. I mean, to me, was that a successful evocation? I mean, I didn't see any angels, but I would say that it was a successful communication. Something happened, and I was interacting with something.
You've seen a representation of the spirit or the god you were, interacting with. Fair dues to you for doing 3 episodes. I probably would have done 1 and went, what?
Yeah,
I'm not getting this.
It's not a terribly good show, to be honest. But I persisted, and when the guy said that, it was just before the end of the episode. It was like, oh shit! It kind of gave me goosebumps, and it was like, okay, I understand. I hear you loud and clear, and I've had a few different experiences when doing the evocations with the art of drawing spirits into crystals that have produced similar synchronicities. So I'm continuing to do that work for no other reason that I am. I'm curious about these synchronicities, and I do see them as potential spirit communications. And I've petitioned. Let's see, Thursday Sachiel. I think Sachiel is the intelligence of the sphere of Jupiter. Mm-hmm. And I've, been doing some work with trying to attract more wealth into my life. And I can't say for sure if that is exclusively a byproduct of the evocations with Sachiel, or if it's a cumulative effect with a lot of other wealth magic I've been doing. But it's one or the other or both. and I can justify that by saying, last year, my wife and I, we decided we were going to move. I didn't want to move, but I'm glad we did. And by the time we had gotten the whole process going, COVID was in full effect, and I was terrified because it was like, fuck, I think the housing market could collapse. Ironically, it was the complete opposite. The housing market in the United States boomed. It's right. Starting to settle down now, but I mean, last year, the way I see it, last year was sort of like a universe or spirits or whatever testing people. And I mean, I don't want to be insensitive to that because I know a lot of people had a really shitty year. I could have, but I kind of interpreted it as like, okay, it's time to shit or get off the pot. That's basically the theme of this year. So moving was a crazy thing to do, but I did it. So, I did a lot of magic over the course of that time. A lot of shoals, a lot of candle magic, some things which will remain anonymous. But one of the things I did is burying a statue of St. Joseph and reciting the appropriate prayer.
It's just upside down, St. Joseph.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So, I did it. I edited the prayer a little bit, and I said, look, if this pans out, I'll buy another statue of you, and I'll put you in a place of honor in my temple if I get a house that I can have a sacred space. Well, the house was on the market for less than 48 hours. We had 9 people lined up, but the first guy that less than 48 hours later said, I'll give you the asking price for your house. We sold it in less than 48 hours. So,
wow. Yeah.
Is that a byproduct of that? I don't know, but I sure as fuck didn't expect it to go that quickly.
Yeah. Is that your magic coming true? I don't know, but next time I'm selling a house, I'm definitely burying a statue of Joseph.
Yeah. And you got to make good on your promise. So my wife and I were able to buy literally our dream house. It's this gorgeous lake house on a lake in the town we live. It's got a finished basement, which my wife has always wanted. Our previous house was just a concrete basement where my band would practice, and she hated it. And it's so weird. Like we named the house the Shire. We even put a little sign on it. It's not a traditional Hobbit house, but the vibe is very much in line with that. And it's just, from the architecture to like everything that we wanted, it was eerie because we went to see another house first, and my wife was like, yeah, I think I really want that. I was like, well, let's go see this one. And I showed her photos, and she didn't like the colors because the colors are very our living room is red, our dining room has yellow, and her room, like, the colors are very funky, but they work in context once you see it in person. But looking at them in photos, she was like, no, I don't think so. I was like, let's just go take a look and we'll see. We pull in the driveway, and the house was immaculate from the outside. And I was like, if it's this nice outside. And so we went in with our realtor, and within 5 minutes, we were both like, holy shit, this house was built for us. So that was the culmination of a lot of different enchantments last year. And that started probably 2 years prior when I had lost my job. I ended up taking a management position in the company that paid for my strategic sorcery course. Okay. 8 months later, I lost my job with about half of the employees because they bought a competitor. And while they got a lot of market share, they lost a ton of money. One of the first things that a company does when that happens is get rid of the marketing department. But I was given a very nice severance package and a letter of recommendation from my president because he really didn't want to let me go, but he didn't really have a choice. So I was out of work for 7 or 8 months. It was awful. Like, I thought it was going to be like a vacation, but I was, not having that daily schedule to some extent was kind of a shock to the system. I did a lot of, playing guitar. I went to the beach. I did artwork, but that feeling of uncertainty was very weird for me, and it ended up giving me like panic attacks on a fairly regular basis. But about halfway through that experience, I got my shit together, and I started enchanting to get a new job. At the very end of that, I ended up taking a job that I received. I got 2 offers, and I took the first one, but I really wanted the second one. I won't go into detail because it's pretty complicated, but I did a lot of enchantments around getting the second job. It was a complicated process. I had to do 4 separate interviews, like a couple of different phone calls. It was a very in-depth process. And I didn't even know if I really wanted it. I was just at the end of my rope. I was going to lose my unemployment, and so I took the job. Well, it turned out to be the closest thing I've ever had to a dream job. I work for a company that sells packaging. It's not, the products aren't sexy by any means, but it's not so much the products that excite me. It's that one, I get to work from home, which is worth its weight in gold. I get paid well, and I get treated better than I've ever been treated by any company ever. I was so taken aback by how happy everyone was in the company that I thought I might have joined a cult by accident. It was that good, and it's literally like the company is literally that great, and I get treated like absolute gold. I get to work from home, and while what I'm doing, the products I'm not super passionate about purely from what they are, but I'm super passionate about the process because every day I write, I podcast, I do video production, I do voice acting for a cartoon series that we did. I get to do a lot of creative stuff, and despite the fact that the products aren't something that I'm passionate about outside of my 9 to 5, I'm getting a lot of phenomenal tools. So I've got some great software that's helping me to become a better writer. Free educational resources from third-party companies, like paid content for podcasting, video editing. So I'm getting paid to learn all of these skills while simultaneously doing all this stuff professionally. So while the topics might not be something I would write about in my own time, I'm so happy with my quality of life from this that it was like the past couple of years have been, to me, proof that magic does work. And it was a calibration that had to take, I don't know, it's probably been between 6 and 10 years since I started. I'd have to really look at it. But from the time I lost my job straight through 2020, I was like, okay, no more fooling around, head down, face forward, just fucking enchant. So I did a lot of spells. I did a lot of sigil shows. I did various magical things, and I was hyper-focused on the manifestation of it. And then I was shocked when a lot of it started to pan out. I ended up with a brand new car. I got this dream house, and I have this job that I'm absolutely head over heels in love with. And, I still got a lot of coals in the fire, and I can't really talk about them now because it's in the process of manifesting. But, as far as I'm concerned, it works and it's real. What does that actually mean? I don't know. Maybe it's psychology. Maybe it's information. Maybe it's spirits. Maybe it's energy. Again, I'm agnostic, and I'm coming at it from a meta model perspective.
That's awesome. Magic has definitely been, your magic journey has been one, to this point, very successful for you, and long may that last, and may your future be even brighter and more magical than it currently is.
Likewise, and I have to, for getting towards the end of the show, I got to point out, Tommy, I mean, one of my magical goals for a while has been coming on this show, and I got to tell you, it is an absolute honor to be here, and I had a blast.
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted that you enjoyed it. I had, as always, I enjoy talking to you anyways, but this was particularly good getting to know you a bit more. And we'll do it again at some point, and maybe pick a topic and, just go off on it or something. But thank you very much. And is there websites, anything you want to point people at, or are you staying in the darkness of the internet for the time being?
Yeah, I mean, I do have a personal website, but it's pretty much a digital portfolio for like corporate work. So the only thing I would mention is, you can, if you're interested in learning more about my work and the success story that I just said about getting the car, the job, the house, etc. I wrote a new book recently called Kaocentric Marketing and the Sorcery of Sales. It's a short book about combining chaos magic with modern sales and marketing techniques. And it basically goes over the story about how I accomplish all this stuff, but it goes deeper into the actual spells, the actual gear work underneath the hood, so to speak. So if anyone's interested, it's Chaocentric Marketing and the Sorcery of Sales. I'm also the author of Interview with the Magus, which you were featured in. And I have a third book called A Labyrinth of Dreams, which is a hyper sigil and part of a 3-book fantasy trilogy series.
Okay, and all these will be in the show notes, all the links to all these different things, so if you want to check them out. So, thank you very much, and talk to you again.
All right, thank you, Tommy. Have a great day.